Good evening. Tonight we're going to be looking at Chapter 2, Section 3, Subtracting Integers out of your textbook. And so our objective today, or tonight, is to learn to subtract integers. And I want to start with an example, and the example is Johnny borrowed $4 from Billy for lunch. He borrowed $3 the next day for lunch from Susie. How much is he in debt? Well, this is very similar to a problem that we did yesterday in class. And if we're going to borrow, that's going to be a negative. And if we borrow again, that's going to be a negative because he's in debt to these kids. And we want to know his total debt. So we're going to set up a problem, -4 plus -3. And of course, we know from yesterday that that's going to be -7. Now, there's more to the problem. It says the next day, Johnny is going to pay Susie back with $3 he had in his bank. Susie tells Johnny he doesn't have to pay back his debt. That was pretty nice of Susie. She's taking away his debt. So how much is he in debt now? Well, if we look at her taking away debt, well, his original amount that he owed Billy was $4, and he owed Susie $3. But she's going to take away that debt. So if she takes away that debt, she's going to change that from a negative to a positive. She's going to add and she's going to change that. So we're going to be adding the opposite of -3. It's like she's giving Johnny this money. So adding, we're going to make that addition. And the opposite, we're going to make the -3 a +3. So now, -4 plus 3 is the same thing as her taking away his debt. These two statements mean the same thing. And if you take -4 plus 3, of course you get -1, and we know that from yesterday. Once we get addition, we can use our addition rules. And if you've forgotten the addition rules, remember, you're going to look at this as its absolute value, so it's really, you're going to take 4 minus 3, because they were unlike signs. And when you subtract them, you get 1. And then you look at the number who's furthest away from 0, and -4 is further away from 0 than +3, so you keep it in negative. Because he can pay Billy $3 of the $4 he owes him, and now only owes him $1, Johnny is in debt $1. So after she took away the debt, now he's only in debt $1. So he goes ahead and pays him the 3 that Susie said, you don't have to pay me. Okay, so this is what we're going to do every time in this classroom. And if you notice, there are signs around the room when you get in tomorrow that say subtraction-free zone. So instead of subtracting from now on, we're going to always say that subtraction means adding the opposite. And that's what we're always going to do. We're going to change it from a subtraction problem to an addition problem. And whatever we're subtracting, whatever that number is, we're going to change it to its opposite sign. We could also say that addition and subtraction are inverse operations. They undo each other. Instead of subtracting a number, you can add its opposite. So we're going to take each one of these problems, and you've already got these on your paper on the slides. And we're going to, first of all, change each one of these subtraction problems separately. We're going to change them to an addition problem. So if we say 5 minus -2, we're going to change that to adding the opposite of -2, which would be +2, plus +2. So we change the subtraction to addition, the negative to a positive. And then 5 plus 2 is easy as 7. So once we get to this step where we've changed it to addition, we just go back to our addition rules from yesterday that we learned. Okay, so for -3 minus 7, we're going to change that to -3 plus -7, because that was positive. We changed that to negative. This was minus. We changed it to plus. And now -3 plus -7, of course, we add and keep the sign, so that's going to be -10. And the last one, -1 minus -8. Now here's the parentheses, and it's separating the negative from the positive, just like we put up here. So we change this to addition, and that to the opposite of -8, which is +8. So now we're really taking -1 plus 8. So we're going to look at the one without the sign, and we're going to subtract them. So 8 minus 1 is 7. And then we say 8's further away from 0 than -1 is, so we're going to keep it a positive, so it's going to be +7. Okay, now we have some checking for understanding. I'm going to do the first one for you since it's a little bit different since we have some algebra. And then you're going to actually do this one alone, and you can pause the video and practice that. Okay, so for A, we've got x equals -4, y is equal to -3. So we're going to take the algebraic expression x minus y. We're going to plug in -4 for x and -3 for y. And when we do that, we have -4 minus, and then the y is -3. We have to put parentheses to separate the negative from the minus. Now we have to change that to adding the opposite. So now we're going to keep this -4. You always keep that the same value. And so it's going to be -4, and then we change that to adding. The opposite of -3 is +3. And again, we go back and use the same rules as yesterday. So they're unlike signs, so we're going to subtract 4 minus 3 is 1. And then since -4 is further away from 0, we're going to keep that negative sign, so it'll be -1. Now this next one, you've got x equals -4 and y equals 5. So I would like for you to do this one on your own, and then go ahead and pause the video, and then turn it back on and check your answer. So for this problem, we're going to plug in -4 for x again, and again y for 5, so that's going to be -4 minus 5 when we plug in the values. Now we're going to change this to adding the opposite. The -4 does not change. So it'll be -4 plus, now we got to change +5 to -5. This time they're like signs, so we're going to add them. 4 and 5 is 9, and keep the sign, so the answer will be -9. Okay, this is kind of a word problem, and I've got a picture of a thermometer over here because we're supposed to find the difference between 32 degrees Fahrenheit and -10 degrees Fahrenheit. So 32 degrees Fahrenheit, we're on this side of the thermometer, and if we're at 32, which is freezing, that is going to be right here. And then at -10 degrees Fahrenheit, we're right here. So we want to know how much space is between there. Well, whenever you find distance on a number line, you have to subtract, and the word difference means subtract. So we're going to take the 32, and we're going to subtract the -10. So we have 32 minus -10. And what I'd like for you to do now is pause the video, and I think you can work that out on your own, and then come back and see if you did it correctly. So we're going to change this to adding, and the opposite of -10 is +10. We do not change the 32. So that's going to be 32 plus 10. So the difference between 32 degrees and -10 degrees, there are 42 degrees between there. So 42 degrees would be the difference in temperature. So if you went from 32 down to -10, then you've dropped 42 degrees. Or if you went from -10 up to 32, you went up 42 degrees. Either way. Okay, that's the end of the lesson. So make sure you filled out your sheet, your notes. And if you haven't, you can go back and rewind and look at anything again to get all your blanks filled in and all your examples done and your check for understandings. And then tomorrow you'll come in and do some practice problems with subtraction. Have a good evening.